We are back in your life, and today we are doing property Tinder. We are talking about what type of person should buy what type of property, or if you should not buy a property at all. My boy Mikey V is still stuck in bed going, I'm sick with the flu. I've got Adam here today who knows a thing or two about property as the Lighthouse Property director. Adam, it is a little bit like Tinder, eh? You got to match the right person to the right property, or say, actually, this is just not meant to be.
Yeah, I think that matchmaking analogy is pretty accurate. And it's good. I think it's good to discuss this on the podcast because I like to really make it clear that when clients meet with me, even though my direct channel is new builds, it doesn't necessarily mean that's what we're going to recommend. And if it's not, we'll send you to the right party.
Yeah, I mean, most people probably treat property a little bit like Pokemon cards, right? Where you're just trying to collect them all and eventually you win. But the reality is that the property that makes sense for somebody who is buying their first investment property versus their fifth investment property, who's setting themselves up for retirement, who's focused on cash flow, they all need different things, don't they?
Yeah, the strategy changes because the client's circumstances change, both in terms of financial capacity, risk appetite, resources that they have that they can deploy.
Cool. Let's jump straight into the different personality types. What are the kind of characteristics that is right for somebody who wants to buy a townhouse?
So there's a couple of things. One, if it's an owner-occupied purchase, typically going to be a first home or a young working professional who doesn't really want to spend their time on renovations and landscaping and all that sort of stuff. Otherwise, if it's an investor, it's someone who's time poor, who wants to focus on their career, who wants simple, easy, low maintenance with decent cash flow and decent capital growth potential.
Yeah, my brother bought his first home, which I talk about a lot when I'm talking about like townhouses. I think it's 750,000 on the St. Heliers border is how a real estate agent would talk about. Now, yes, it's Glen Innes. Much love to Glen Innes. You just got to, not walk around after dark. And then Jess lives in who's on the podcast a lot, lives in a townhouse down south, kind of near Mount Wellington. I think they call it a peninsula in Otahu.
Seaside Park.
Now, that's great advertising really as well. But you're right. I think once again, we did the previous episode and we'll pop it in the show notes, the link around, new builds overhyped and are they dead and all that sort of thing. They're for the person who is just wanting something really easy. Or the other one, for their first investment property, I'm like, there's enough moving pieces in terms of you got to deal with an accountant, you got to keep your property manager accountable. There's the bank account structure. There's the, keeping your documentation all set up. I feel like for the first one, just get a run on the board, keep it really simple. Don't try and hit a home run. And then you can evolve with your strategy later on if you want to.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other big thing with new build investment properties is at the moment we can get away with a 10% deposit in many cases, which is much lower than an existing home, usually closer to 30%. So there's a lot of people out there that we meet with where that's really their only option anyway.
Yeah. How about a standalone property, Adam? Who's right for a standalone property?
I think there's a wider audience of people who could want a standalone property. I assume we're going to count that as existing.
Yep.
Yeah. So existing properties, there's a range there. Sometimes people like to purchase existing as your first home, but normally you're going to need some kind of higher financial capacity. Standalone home in the same area as a townhouse is definitely going to be much higher purchase price, unless it's a complete dump, in which case you've got a renovation on your hands, which you also need funds for. Existing homes are typically quite good for families who want a little bit more land, a bit of a backyard, some more space for the kids to play. And then also when it comes to investors, once they've got a couple of new builds or a couple of townhouses and everything's running smoothly, build up a bigger equity base and then want to take on maybe a little bit more risk or diversify, it's also a good step for them.
Yeah, I love the idea of little Coopy and Bodie running around in a big backyard. Makes a lot of sense to me. I think it's probably also for the person, if you're buying existing, if you're buying a city centre, you're really speculating on the land value and going, I understand that this is going to cash flow quite poorly and I'm willing to throw enough money in a financial position that I think the value of the property will go up. Sometimes I hear the whole subdivision thing as well. I'm going to hold this and, it'll be do something with it in the future. And then we can obviously switch to if you're buying something in the regions is the other piece where not multi-units yet. We'll come to that in a second. But if you're buying something where it cash flows quite well, but because it's in the region, there's not the question marks around whether you'll get those capital gains.
Yeah, I think the regional properties do suit one of two people. Either one, people who are chasing cash flow or require cash flow because they don't have the disposable income to make top-ups on a capital growth play. Or two, people who are just trying to diversify and are making a more speculative investment in the hopes that there's going to be some infrastructure in these smaller regions over the next 5 to 10 years that pushes prices up substantially.
If I had $1 for every time somebody tried to get me to buy a property in Levin at the moment, apparently there's a new motorway or something going through there. I'm like, I'm not buying anything in Levin anytime soon. Then we probably add in the queen of cash flow into the mix, which is obviously Ilsa Wolf and kind of like her offering around like a renovation style strategy. So that is like the utopia where you can increase the cash flow, potentially get some capital gain uplift. There's probably a couple of questions. One is the capital required. I think like minimum to be working with Ilsa, you have to have like $250,000 between the equity and the renovation cost. Secondly, the risk profile of the person. You got to understand that these things take time. There's going to be vacancy that you're going to work through it. That's kind of why you pay the professional, which is probably another thing to keep in mind. And the other bits, just time. Like, do you want to do that? And it's not just about like if you go, what makes people the most money? I think it's probably doing a strategy like that. But just because something makes the most money, if it's going to like kind of like having an aggressive share portfolio or whatever, right? Like just because it's going to make you more money, if it's going to take more time or freak you out or you're not about that, you want something a little bit that's just sitting in the background, you got to really work through that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for that reason, those more advanced strategies are typically maybe property 3 or 4 further down the line. Once you know a little bit more about property investment, you're comfortable with purchasing and being a landlord, then you can take those bigger punts.
Yeah. And then we've got multis, and your boy loves a multi. So multis are, as per the description, you've got multiple dwellings on one piece of land, requires more capital. You can just buy them and hold them because there's more dwellings. Obviously, there's more, trust me, as somebody who's got a few of them, the maintenance bills that pop up, and I renovated all of them as well, that they're going to pop up over time. So quite capital intensive, really need to know what you're doing. And there's going to be more costs that pop up as you go. Can work out really well, but you got to be in a position to be able to do it.
What did your steps look like with your property buying?
Journey?
Yeah.
Bought my first home, which was townhouse. Then rented that out, which was a bad decision. Should have just sold it. Bought a house in Wellington to live in, and then rented that property out. Okay. Then came back to Auckland, sold the property in Wellington, and then Mike and I went on our multi journey. So we bought 3 lots of 3 or 4, depending on how you count it, of like multi-unit properties. And then we sold eventually the townhouse. And then my next step is I want to go from a 3-bedroom home to a 4-bedroom home.
How old were you when you bought that first home?
I was 25, I think.
So just a couple of years ago?
Yeah, just a couple of, just look at these guys. Just a couple of years ago, I remember I was negotiating that property on the way to lawn bowls in Glendowie, where I want to meet
Core memory unlocked.
I want to meet Pack that night in the raffle. Great place for a financial advisor to hang out is at lawn bowls places because a lot of people are older, more likely have money, and old people love me. But let's move back onto the property piece and swing probably to the last type of property, which is commercial.
Yeah, I mean, commercial's kind of the pinnacle in some ways, where you have the highest financial requirements to get in, where you normally need 50% deposit, roughly speaking, and decent asset is probably north of $1 million. So $500K baseline is what you're going to need in equity or cash. But if you get the right lease, they're really attractive. Triple net leases where the tenant pays for the maintenance, the bills, the insurance, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you're right. It's definitely a big boy, big girl asset, and obviously it's just start $1 million and go to like 100 million plus in terms of the type of asset. I think the risk here is you've got to have like a lot of wealth to, in most situations, get going. The cash flows look really good. The capital gains look really good. Because commercial as a term, though, is a very wide-ranging term that covers offices, retail, industrial, much more likely you buy dud. Which is why if somebody wants to do something, we'll usually go like, hey, go talk to like a buyer's agent like Rethink to make it work. Because if you buy the wrong property and then it goes vacant and you try and sell it without a tenant in there, it can be a very, very painful lesson.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things with commercial is that the risk is kind of concentrated and more intensive at times, where residential, in a bad situation, you might have 4 or 6 weeks vacancy. Commercial, we've seen this over the last couple of years in Auckland City, where sometimes there's a year of vacancy, if not more.
Yeah. So that's probably commercial, and that's probably the asset that works the best as you're heading into retirement as well, because the cash flows will be quite strong. In terms of when you shouldn't do property at all, once again, not one size fits all with this stuff. The problem generally with property, so property will make you more wealth, and like shares are probably what we're talking about, as you're growing your wealth and you're happy to get rich on paper. But as soon as you go, I'd like some income over here, please. Even if I've talked to many a person where they're like, we'll just pay off the debt on the residential investment property. And they look, even with no debt, they've got their maintenance costs because it's a bit older by then, property management, rates, insurance, and then they pay tax. The value of the property keeps going up over time. So they're getting richer on paper, but they've got no cash flow. So you've got to think about when property doesn't work is when you go, I want cash flow to be able to pay my bills, go on holiday. They're saying you can't sell a bedroom to go over to Europe or whatever, is what you need to work through. A really good thing that if people have had property for a long period of time, is going, you don't have to sell them all at once. If you've got like 2 or 3, you could sell one, put it into shares, erode the capital, sell it, put it into shares, erode the capital. But you've got to think about how am I going to get income can be the challenge sometimes with property.
Yeah, and that's why when I first meet with clients, typically if they're anywhere over 50 years old, my first question to them is, when do you intend to retire? Or when do you want to be able to replace at least part of your income? Because if that's their focus and we're looking at a capital growth property, which most new builds we look at that'll be slightly cash flow negative, it's probably not going to be the right play for them.
Yeah, it just depends how much total wealth they have, right? Like you just need to make sure you've got enough money going into shares and investments that are more liquid. If you can do that while having a property, like why not both?
What would you say the minimum time frame usually would be you recommend people expecting to hold the property for?
10 years.
Okay.
10 years. And then the other problem I've got sometimes is it depends on how much spare savings that they have.
Yeah.
So say, for example, if they're topping up if they're 55 and they're topping up a new build by 15 grand a year and that's all the spare cash flow they have, I've got a problem with that because I want money going into the liquid asset.
Yeah.
If they've got $30,000 or $45,000 of spare cash flow and it's like 50% into topping up and then 50% into shares or more, I can get my head around those situations. But we'll project those out as well and go, with property, without property, what does it look like? But you need cash flow.
So then theoretically, if someone, let's say we had a client who was 60 who was adamant that they didn't want to stop working until at least 70, would a property potentially be a good purchase for them then?
I go, great that you want to work until 70.
Okay.
Not everybody has the choice to work until 70 because of their health.
Sure.
I really dismiss the whole I want to work longer thing quickly. I'm like, if that works out, cool, let's not plan for it.
Okay.
Because stuff does go wrong sometimes.
Makes sense.
All right, so we're going to wrap it up there. That is the different personas to the different property types, or not at all. Let us know, what is your Tinder match in the comment section? What type of property do you like? Or what I know a lot of people will be saying, Adam, is screw property. I'm just going with my index funds because they've outperformed property over the past 5 years.
Yeah, but then you don't get the leverage, right?
That is true. In leverage, as long as the property goes back up in value at some point. That's the bit I'm waiting for to go up. We'll wrap it up right there. Make sure to like, review, subscribe. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you very much.